degree, the one thing that is kind of drummed into you throughout the law degree, or it certainly was when I did it, is that there are only two paths to qualification. You can either be a solicitor or you can train and be a barrister. And it's only really when you get into practice that you realise there are so many more options available.
Welcome to the Legal Navigator podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca from Law Training Centre, and today we're joined by a very special guest speaker, Helen Claydon. Helen is a multi-award winning legal practitioner with over a decade of experience specialising in private client work, including wills, trust, probate, estate planning, taxation, conveyancing, and court of protection matters. In 2023, she actually made history as the first woman to win the Today's Wills and Probate Industry Champion Award at the British Wills and Probate Awards, recognising her outstanding contributions to the sector. Helen is also a co-founder and chief legal officer of HAIG Legal Group, where she works to make legal services more accessible and advocates for better training and development in the legal profession. But today we'll hear about Helen's journey to success and her advice on dual qualified in probate and conveyancing. It'll be perfect for anyone who's looking to take the next step in their legal career. But before we get started, thank you so much for joining us today, Helen. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's an absolute privilege to be here with you. Really excited, so thanks for the invite.
Thank you so much, Helen. If you could start off just to share with our listeners today just a bit more about your background and your current role at HAIG Legal Group and just your journey on how you became a dual qualified CLC conveyancer and probate practitioner.
Yeah, so at the moment I'm Chief Legal Officer for HAIG Legal Group, and we're a group of companies that provide private client and property services across the sector. My journey into qualification was quite unusual, really, and I think it kind of taught me that there isn't one route to qualification, and I think that's something that the listeners will probably be quite interested in. My journey began very traditionally with a law degree, and I did the legal practice course. And it was when I actually got into practice working for a firm that dealt primarily with probate that I decided that I didn't want to be a high street solicitor. And the link with probate and property work became really apparent to me. And that's when I first saw the link between the two and the value in being dual qualified across conveyancing and probate.
That's really great. So you've come obviously from a traditional background of like the law degree and the LPC. So I'm just curious, what made you want to switch the qualification pathways and choose the CLC route rather than just qualifying through the LPC as a solicitor specializing in conveyancing, perhaps?
I think one thing, when you do the law degree, the one thing that is kind of drummed into you throughout the law degree, or it certainly was when I did it, is that there are only two paths to qualification. You can either be a solicitor or you can train and be a barrister. And they're the only two pathways that people talk about. So I thought, well, I don't want to be a barrister. I want to deal directly with clients. So I started on the solicitor route. And it's only really when you get into practice that you realise there are so many more options available. And I quickly realised that actually my passion laid in private client and conveyancing work. And so I looked for a qualification that was more specialised and that would give me the necessary skills and also look at things a bit more commercially than being a high street solicitor. So for me, the CLC qualifications were the ones that I chose to follow.
Yeah, I believe you've also studied the SILEX qualification. If you could just, elaborate on how that has also influenced your career path and progression.
Yeah, I did. As a law graduate, I got to start on the graduate fast track with SILEX. And of course, SILEX is a general overview of the law, a bit like the law degree. So you cover lots of different subjects and it shows an overall understanding of the law in many different areas. So it was a natural step to actually complete the remainder of the graduate course and become a fellow of SILEX as well.
Mm-hmm. So how was your study style during that period? Was it like online or a hybrid sort of format?
So it was mostly self-study with visits for exams and things like that. It was pre-COVID, so there was a lot more face-to-face contact, really, doing exams in large centres across the UK. So now it's a lot easier with being able to do exams remotely, although there are still some exams that take place face-to-face. But at the time that I did it, it was a lot more face-to-face.
Yeah. So we do get a lot of people who find it very challenging and difficult to balance both the studying aspect and also, let's say, working alongside their qualifications to get like their practical work experience completed as well, or for whatever situation. It could be family commitments and so on. So what would your advice be to those who are struggling to balance the qualifications along other commitments? What particularly worked for you during your studying days?
It is hard work, and hats off to anybody who completes a qualification while working or with a family. I was actually a single parent to a young daughter at the time that I was doing my qualifications, trying to work full time as well. So I can completely sympathise with everyone that's doing that, that's out there. My advice would be get organised. I had to set myself a timetable so that I knew exactly what subjects I was covering in which week to make sure that I stayed on top of it. Because as soon as you start to let it slip, it's really quickly to then get behind and get overwhelmed.
Mm.
Always reach out for help as well. Your tutors are there to help you. And if you are feeling overwhelmed, reach out to them and they can help you feel like you're back on top of things as well. But I think being organized is the biggest thing, really. And remember, it's a short term thing. This is something that is going to really enhance your career and take you to that next step. So those sacrifices that you're making right now during the qualification time will all pay off in the long run.
Yeah. Gosh, I can only imagine how difficult it must be having, a child and balancing your studies. Were there any other challenges that you perhaps faced during your journey? And if so, just how did you overcome them?
I think time constraints is probably the biggest one,
Biggest one.
really. That's what you have to juggle the most.
Mm.
But really coming up against I don't know, challenges in work as well. As a female, I often talk about the issues that females face in a fast-paced legal environment as well, and that can be difficult, especially if you're juggling family life and qualifications and trying to better yourself. So I think the key thing is remain focused. Don't worry about what else is going on around you, because at the end of the day, you're doing this for yourself. And I think that's the important thing to remember.
Yeah. So definitely time management is very, very important as well. But would you say there are any other strategies or habits that one can adopt to help them succeed in their studying?
Yeah, I think you have to keep it balanced as well. You'll be trying to fill every spare second with cramming for exams or doing your subjects or keeping on top of work, but also make sure that you're looking after yourself as well and maintaining that balance and taking time out. It's really important, even if it's just get away from your desk for 10 minutes and get some fresh air. That can make such a difference to your focus long term, I think. So look at the balance as well.
Really good tips there. So, do you find that being dual qualified has given you like a competitive edge in the legal industry? And if so, how?
I definitely think it has. I think having an understanding of different areas of law that are so closely linked really helps. In my role now, we actually work with a number of different firms and different introducers across the country, and they tend to come to us for technical advice and support. And having that knowledge of different areas of law really helps to be able to provide the correct advice and keep on top of changes in legislation and things like that. So I think once you get qualified in different areas, it's almost like a snowball effect that then you gain more knowledge as well. So yeah, I think it has really had an impact.
Mm, that's great. I just want to touch on just the recruitment and employment opportunities. As you can imagine, the industry is so cutthroat now and it's very competitive. We get many inquiries from learners who are struggling just to get, sort of basic work experience. Talk less of people who are looking for that first sort of initial graduate role or, the training contract for whatever sort of profession they're looking to get in specifically within the legal field. So, what do employers in specifically conveyancing and probate look for when hiring, and what traits can make candidates stand out?
You're right, it's so competitive. So I think anything you can do that makes your CV and your application stand out from the crowd is really important. One thing that we really look for is someone who's committed. So
Mm.
it's really hard as a graduate, either a Silex graduate or a law degree graduate who's done a general qualification, to then approach a firm to say, I want to work in probate or I want to work in private client or conveyancing. It's very difficult to then show to that employer that you are committed to that path.
Mm.
And I think committing to further qualifications that are very specific to the role you are looking for is a really good indicator to your potential employer that you are committed to that and that you're dedicated and that you're willing to work towards that. Getting work experience, even if you have to volunteer to get work experience in the specific area that you want to practice in, is really good and worthwhile as well, and something that will really stand out because it shows that you've chosen this path and that you're committed to follow that forwards.
Yeah. So it's good that you touched on, just having that further study. And so how
Yeah.
important would you say for potential hires to have professional qualifications specifically for like CLC or Silex? Do you see any advantages or disadvantages to hiring candidates with these qualifications versus those with just literally practical experience?
There are definitely advantages to employing someone who's got professional qualifications, because what it means is that they are dedicated to that specific area of law, and that really shows by completing a professional qualification. It shows that they're committed to their career as well and that they're looking for development. One thing that we always look for in candidates is that willingness to better themselves, improve their knowledge, and to grow with us as a firm, because then their success is our success as well. It's not the be all and end all, because we like to support our candidates and employees through qualifications. So, if they come to us and they say, this is what I'd like to do, I'd really like to pursue professional qualifications in the future, we always talk about that at the recruitment stage as well. And I think that's really important, but it's having that willingness to go forward and take on further qualifications. And that's sometimes difficult if you've just graduated and you're thinking, I want to get into work and not worry about taking any more exams.
Yeah, just to touch on that for people who've just graduated or completed a qualification, are there any sort of practical sort of tips that you can give, like in terms of like the way they can structure their CVs or network with professionals, or how would you go about securing any sort of work just post completing a qualification?
I think really focus on the skills that you've learned from that qualification. I see lots of CVs. I'm heavily involved in the recruitment for our firm and interviewing. And the ones that really stand out are the ones that specifically refer to skills that that individual has gained. So if you particularly enjoyed a unit where you learnt skills, say in reading land registry titles, that kind of thing, then put it on your CV, because if you've got experience of doing that from a practical point of view, that's really going to stand out, as opposed to someone who just puts the name of a qualification on the CV without really explaining what that means.
Perfect. So, what are the other types of roles or opportunities that beginners should look for to build relevant experience?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because it's really hard to get that first step on the ladder, because so many firms are looking for someone who's got experience already. So I think my advice would be, keep an open mind, look for administration roles within a legal firm as well. We quite often take on employees in our admin. It's a great way to gain experience. It's a great way to get to know the firm and also find out if it's a firm that you want to be with long term as well. But that's a really good way of getting that foot in the door and giving yourself an opportunity to prove what you're capable of as well to the firm. Because if you're more than capable of stepping up to a paralegal role and climbing up the ladder, they will identify it and they will push you forward to do that.
Brilliant, thank you. So you did touch on earlier that you like to support your team in training and development. So I wanted to just touch on that just a bit further. Um, you currently sponsor some of your employees to study SQE and CLC qualifications.
Yeah.
Why specifically those qualifications?
Because they're They're very relevant to what we do on a daily basis. So across the group, we deal with probate quite a lot. We've got a completely separate conveyancing firm, which is a regulated firm. So it's very kind of targeted to the CRC qualifications, really. And now they do the separate conveyancing and probate qualifications. It means that our candidates can pick and choose between their favourite subjects and the area that they're actually working in. The SQE, of course, is an excellent way for someone who has taken that traditional route to take advantage of the new way of qualifying. And it means that we can support staff growing through their journey, get them qualified as solicitors, and then they can retain, because our staff like to work for our firms. They want to stay with us, and it gives them the opportunity to be able to progress while staying in a job that they enjoy.
Yeah. So I was just going to touch on that, just how sponsoring staff for training and qualifications has impacted your team. So if you could just give examples of any sort of positive changes or improvements you've noticed in their skills, their
Yeah.
motivations, or just overall performance in general.
Yeah, it has a huge impact. It has an impact on the person themselves because it gives them more confidence in their role. It not only gives them the knowledge to be able to excel in what they're doing, but the confidence then to share that with their colleagues. And it's amazing that if you have one person in a team who is taking a qualification and learning and is enthusiastic about their role and that qualification, that spreads across the team as well. So it has a positive impact on other staff who, especially the junior staff who come in and they've got ideas of progressing, but they feel like they're not able to put themselves forward for it at this stage. It gives them the confidence to see what is possible in the future as well.
Yeah. Would you say it's had a significant impact on retention and just overall recruitment?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we talk about qualifications at the recruitment stage
That's
because there are so many graduates or young professionals who are looking to grow and develop, and they're looking for a firm that will support that.
yeah.
So we talk about that at the recruitment stage. But yeah, absolutely. Making these opportunities available to staff really does help with retention because they can see that we're committed to their own development as well as the development of the firm.
Brilliant. Can you share any success stories from someone you've sponsored and their career progression?
Yeah, so we've got very many talented people across the group. It's an absolute privilege to be able to help them with their qualifications. One success story that we've got is a young lady who works for our conveyancing firm. She joined us as a law graduate. It was her first role, and she joined us in an administration role because she wasn't sure what she wanted to do, but she knew that she wanted to work in a legal environment. And she worked with us for a couple of years in an admin role. She grew into then, she decided she wanted to work in probate, and she's now working as a probate case handler. And she is now taking her SQEs to qualify as a solicitor. And she was recently given an award by the Law Training Centre as well because of her studies and the commitment that she's shown to her studies. So we're really proud of the progress that she's making.
That's brilliant. So, what would you say has been the most rewarding aspect of supporting your team's career and growth?
Absolutely celebrating their successes, to see them on results day when they get the results that they deserve because they've worked so hard for it, and to be able to celebrate that with them is really rewarding. Yeah, and seeing especially those that have had doubts about their capabilities or have struggled through their studies, and we've been able to support them and give them the extra help that they need to see them actually achieve what they set out to do is really rewarding.
It is indeed. So, what advice would you give for other law firms or people in decision-making positions like yourself who are considering sponsoring their team's legal qualifications? What advice would you give them?
It's absolutely worthwhile. It really is because you can then get commitment from junior members of staff. If you identify a talent within somebody within your team, then you need to nurture that talent and help them to grow because by showing that commitment to them, they will then be committed to the growth of the firm. And we definitely have seen a positive change from sponsoring our staff. So I would definitely recommend it to firms out there.
Brilliant. So, for those listeners who have already started their career, but they're looking to take the next step and become successful and, further develop. So, what would be your top strategies for building a successful career in the legal profession?
Gosh, that's a really tricky one because there are so many journeys to success, and everyone's idea of success looks different. I
Mm,
think really focus on what you want to achieve, look at the end goal, and then break it up into steps as to how you want to get there. One key thing I think is talking to people who are working in the position that you want to be in the future. I know myself, I'm always happy to answer questions from people because I think it helps grow the next generation of lawyers beneath us who are going to come in and take the industry even further. So speak to people who are in that position. They might even be able to give you some tips. I know I can tell people some of the things that I definitely wouldn't do if I was going through it all over again. So just picking up some helpful tips like that might really make a difference. But absolutely go for it. If you've got an idea in your head where you want to be and what you think success looks like, then plan out the steps you need to take to get there.
great. Is there any sort of advice you can give for practitioners and on how they can stay ahead in the competitive legal market?
Yeah, it's difficult because things change so quickly. There are so many legislation changes. You know, we saw it with the budget this year. There's always something that we have to keep on top of to stay at the top of our game. I think choosing your areas where you get your CPD from is really important because there's so many information sources out there that you can find that your inbox is completely flooded with information and you end up not being able to take any of it on. So pick a couple of really good sources of information, I think, where you know that you're going to get regular updates and stick to those and make sure you're setting that time aside. Just have 10 minutes with a cup of tea and make sure that you go through that to keep on top of your game.
Brilliant. In your experience, how important is networking, and what steps do you recommend to build a strong professional network in, if somebody who's just starting their career, how can they build that sort of good sort of network?
Yeah, I think be selective, really. It's really easy now with a lot of online platforms to make connections with a lot of different people that don't actually mean anything and you don't get anything out of. So find groups of people that you can meet either online or face to face who are working in the industry and who you aspire to be like, really. I'm part or lucky enough to be part of a couple of different groups where we meet regularly a few times a year. We undertake CPD together and we learn about each other's businesses as well. So, not just from a legal point of view and staying on top of that, but also on the business development side. And that's really important as well. It's being in business can be quite lonely when you get to a certain level. So for people who aspire to run their own businesses or things like that, it's really important to have people around you who can understand that process and can share those things with you. That's really key. So my biggest thing would be be selective about the people that you surround yourself with, so that you are getting quality more than quantity, I think.
Brilliant. And just to touch on what you've just mentioned there about being in that position to run your own firm. So as a director and the chief legal officer of HAIG Legal Group, what are some of the most important leadership qualities that you think are necessary for running a successful legal team or firm?
I think starting from the ground up is really important. You
Yeah.
know, learning the roles that happen across the firm, so that you know what everyone's role is and what everybody's doing, and that you've got hands-on experience of doing that from a practical point of view as well. And then lead from the front. I would never ask any of our employees to do something that I wouldn't be prepared to do myself. And I think it's really important that they see that you are leading from the front and acting as an example and rolling your sleeves up and getting stuck in when we're really busy. I am first sat at the desk saying, right, what can I do to support you and help you? And I think that really makes a difference. People see that kind of leadership. They aspire to be that kind of leader, but also it then shows that they're supported as well, and makes their role kind of feel a bit a bit easier.
Yeah, it's very important. So you mentioned earlier, and rightfully so, that the legal industry is always changing, it's forever evolving. So how do you ensure that your firm remains innovative and responsive to industry changes?
I think you've got to be constantly looking for the next thing,
Mhm.
constantly looking at ways to change and develop. We are always reviewing our processes. We have regular meetings where we tear our processes apart, look at weaknesses in the processes, and constantly move forward. In this industry, if you are standing still and not looking at anything and not developing anything, you're effectively moving backwards because things move so quickly around you. And I think it's being open to that and also getting on board people who are great at initiatives and development because we've got some great ideas people who are able to drive that forwards with the business. I think that's really important.
Yeah. Must be quite challenging balancing, managing your own team and and everything else with but I'm just curious to know how do you balance your leadership duties and your work as a practitioner, and what tips do you have for others who are also looking to balance management and legal practice?
Yeah, I think it becomes really difficult, and there's naturally going to be a change and a shift because if you're managing a team and dealing with driving a business forward and business development,
Yeah.
you're not going to have the time as a practitioner to do the hands-on work. But I think it's really important to keep doing that and keep on top of the day to day so that you still are relevant really and that you're current, so when you're looking at driving the business you have got that hands-on experience. It is a balancing act, but I still feel that it's important enough to make sure that there is time to discuss specific cases. You find that your workload becomes full of more complicated matters and helping other members of staff to deal with more complicated matters as your knowledge grows. But that's part of development, really.
Yeah. Brilliant. So looking ahead, what are the biggest changes or challenges that you foresee for the conveyancing and probate sectors?
I think I think both sectors are constantly changing. Conveyancing always has its ups and downs. With house prices being so high, there's a drop in the demand for conveyancing services because people aren't moving house. I mean, we're lucky that our business comes from a lot of probate and trust work, so we are forever busy.
Yeah.
And I think it's finding that niche in the market and
Mm.
making sure that you're identifying ways where you can make sure that your business is consistent and carrying that forward. On the probate side, probate has always been a difficult thing to get the workflow through the business, especially with the probate court delays, which are now thankfully improving somewhat. That's certainly helping probate practitioners to provide a service that meets the client expectations. Because it's just been really difficult to meet those expectations where there are so many delays. But I think those challenges will continue. There will always be something that makes it challenging, but that's what keeps us in the industry, I think.
That's great. So do you think the trends in dual qualification and alternative routes to legal practice will shape the profession in any new ways?
I definitely, yeah. I really hope
Mm.
going back to my university days when nobody talked about different routes to qualification,
Mm.
nobody talked about different career paths. I really hope that has changed now. And I know that you, through the Law Training Centre, do a lot to promote different routes to qualification as well. And I really hope that that message is getting out there because, you mentioned at the start that we like to make legal services available to everybody. I think it's really important that that kind of training and development is made available to everybody as well, whatever their circumstances, making sure that if individuals do want to better themselves and take qualifications, that there are ways that they can do that. So I definitely think it will shape things in the future and change things. Look at the development of the SQEs over the traditional training contract. That's really made a difference in legal qualification.
Brilliant. So what's next for you in your career? Are there any exciting projects or goals you're currently working on or looking to do in the new year?
There's always something. It's next year is a big year for our group. We've set ourselves some ambitious targets in relation to growth and development, which means recruiting new staff, securing new talent, helping more of our staff to get qualified. So we've got some big targets ahead, but it'll be an exciting start to the new year.
I'm looking forward to it. So, what would be your message or key takeaway that you would like to leave our listeners with as they plan their own careers in these fields?
I think it's really important to focus on your goals, not lose sight of what you want to achieve, break it down into manageable steps and really go for it. You know, there is nothing holding you back from achieving what you want to achieve. Get some support, get people around you that are a positive influence and go for it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Helen. That was brilliant. Really, really useful information there. And thank you all for listening to the Legal Navigator podcast. If you have any questions or would like to find out more information, please feel free to email us on info@ltckent.co.uk, or you can visit our website at ltckent.co.uk. Thank you once again, Helen, and thank you all for listening.
You're very welcome.